Tonight, my brother slides a folder across a mahogany table. My folder, my words, my drafting, and smiles at a room full of witnesses like a man who has already won. He has no idea I've been waiting 7 years for this exact moment. Let me take you back. Family dinners at my mother's house in Atlanta were never meals. They were productions. Rosa Greco brought out the good china. The wine was always something Dante selected from a contact in Florence. Conversation orbited him like a solar system. Everything pulled toward his warmth, the rest of us existing at varying distances. I was always the farthest planet. Dante is 38, broad-shouldered, quick-laughing, the kind of man who makes strangers feel immediately known. He runs a boutique investment firm in Miami, Greco Capital Partners. The name alone tells you everything about how he sees himself. 2 regional magazine features. My mother keeps both issues in the living room arranged like scripture. I am 34. I am a compliance officer specializing in financial fraud investigation. When I tell people this at dinner parties, something flickers across their faces. Interest, discomfort, the specific unease of people wondering briefly if they have anything to hide. They usually change the subject. My mother calls my job Valentina's government paperwork. Dante once told a cousin I worked in corporate auditing, the boring kind. Neither of them has ever asked me a single specific question about what I actually do. For a very long time, that was their greatest mistake. 7 years ago, my uncle Marco called me on a Tuesday evening. Marco Ricci, my father's older brother, a man who built his commercial real estate portfolio from a single warehouse in Houston in 1981 and spent 40 decades turning it into 8 properties across Atlanta and Houston, valued by the time I was an adult, north of $6 million. Marco was not warm. He was precise, economical with words the way people are when they learned early that talk is cheap and execution is everything. "Valentina," he said, no greeting. "I have a problem. I need someone I trust. I need it handled without noise." "What kind of problem?" Then came a pause. Marco's pauses were never empty. They were calculations. Money's moving from my accounts in ways I didn't authorize. Renovation invoices that don't match any contractor I've hired. Vendor payments to companies I've never heard of. Someone is inside my books. They've been there at least 2 years. I pulled up a blank document on my screen. Old habit. "Who do you suspect?" The pause this time was longer, and in that silence, something in my chest dropped. The particular dread of already knowing an answer before it arrives. "I need you to look first," he said, "before I know for certain." I flew to Atlanta that weekend. What I found in Marco's books took 3 weeks to fully map. Vendor companies with legitimate-sounding names that dissolved 6 months after receiving payment. Renovation budgets padded 12 to 18% on every project. Cash withdrawals coded as emergency maintenance expenses, timed precisely to fall below the threshold that triggers automatic audit flags. Whoever did this understood exactly how financial oversight worked. They understood it because I had explained it to them at a family dinner 3 years prior, when my mother asked what I did for work, and Dante, for the first time in my professional life, leaned in and listened with his full attention. I remember feeling quietly pleased that my brother was finally curious about my world. I was not yet wise enough to understand that Dante's curiosity was never innocent. But before I told Marco anything, I found something else. 6 months after that dinner, 6 months after Dante listened so carefully, he came to me privately. He called it a conversation between siblings, said he was in trouble. Not catastrophic, he was careful to say, just the kind of financial pressure that accumulates quietly when your overhead scales faster than your revenue and you're too proud to tell anyone. He needed documents, specifically something that would establish Marco's intention to leave him the properties. Not a will, that required Marco's actual signature. Something softer, a letter of intent, a memorandum of understanding, something that, in the event of Marco's death, would secure Dante's claim before formal probate could move in any other direction. He said I was the only person who understood legal language well enough, the only person he trusted. I drafted the documents. I told myself I was helping my brother through a difficult season, that Marco was healthy, that this was precautionary anxiety from a man under pressure, that nothing would ever come of it. I did not file them, but I kept every draft, every email with Dante's requested revisions, every version with his fingerprints embedded in the language. I kept them because the part of me that investigates fraud for a living already knew. What I told Marco was what I found in his books. $214,000 moved across 5 properties over 3 years through shell vendors that traced back, after enough digging, to a holding account in Dante's name. Marco listened without interrupting. When I finished, he was quiet for a long time. "What do you want to do?" I asked. "Nothing yet," he said. "I want to watch a little longer." I understood that. I was watching too. Marco died 18 months ago. Cardiac event. Sudden, swift, the way he would have wanted to go if anyone had asked him. He was 77, sharp to the very end. His attorney, Gianna Ferraro, called me the morning after the funeral. Her voice was measured, warm at the edges, in the way of someone who has delivered difficult news enough to know how to soften it without diluting it. "The estate is ready for formal distribution," she said. "There are some things that will be unexpected." The way she said unexpected, carefully, like a word chosen over several alternatives, told me everything I needed to prepare for. I went home that night and moved the folder from my filing cabinet to my desk drawer. The law office of Gianna Ferraro occupies the 14th floor of a glass building in downtown Atlanta, the kind of office that communicates seriousness without trying, no art that isn't original, no furniture that isn't intentional. We sit around the conference table. Rosa to my left, hands folded, posture rigid with the specific tension of a woman bracing for good news she's already decided she deserves. 2 cousins from Marco's side, Lorenzo and Pietro, who visited twice a year and are now suddenly very present. Dante across from me, jacket tailored, jaw relaxed, performing a man with nothing to fear. I arrive last. I sit nearest the door. Gianna moves through the estate methodically. Personal items, vehicles, art. The cousins relax slightly. Rosa softens a degree. Dante checks his phone once, then sets it face down, the gesture of a man waiting for the moment he knows is coming. Then Gianna clears her throat. The commercial properties, 8 units held under Greco Legacy Holdings LLC, combined current market valuation of approximately $7.2 million. Dante sits up. Per the terms of Marco Ricci's estate, all 8 properties are to be transferred in full to Valentina Marie Greco. The room doesn't explode. There is a half-second of geological silence, 7 people processing the same sentence at 7 different speeds. Then Rosa makes a sound that isn't quite a word. Lorenzo says something in Italian, and Dante goes completely still. That stillness is the most alarming thing in the room. Dante Greco has not been still a single day in his life. Stillness on Dante means the performance has stopped, means whatever lives underneath is doing the work now. "There's been an error," he says, conversational, level. Marco and I had extensive discussions about these properties. His intentions were explicit. The paperwork simply wasn't updated before he passed. He reaches into his leather portfolio and slides a folder across the table. I have documentation confirming his intent. Gianna looks at it the way a surgeon looks at a scan, reading what she already suspects before confirming it. I don't look at the folder at all. I look at my brother, and for the first time in 7 years, I let him see that I am not surprised. Something moves across his face, fast. Gone before anyone else catches it. But I catch it. I have studied that face my entire life, and I know every expression it produces, including the one it makes when Dante realizes he is miscalculated. "Valentina," he says slowly, "you seem very calm." I am very calm, I agree. Gianna opens the folder Dante submitted. She reads in silence, a long silence with texture. "Mr. Greco," she says finally, "did Marcos sign these documents in your presence?" "His signature is on the bottom of both pages," Dante says smoothly. Gianna looks at me. I reach into my bag. I place my folder on the table. "Before we go further," I say quietly, "I need to submit something for the record." I slide the first page to the center of the table. Most people here won't recognize it immediately. Gianna will. Dante already does. This is the original draft of both documents in that folder, written by me, at my brother's request, 3 years before Marco died. I have 17 email exchanges in which Dante requested specific language revisions. I have a notarized witness statement from Catalina Morales, dated 4 years ago, confirming she was present when Dante asked me to fabricate documentation establishing his inheritance claim, without Marco's knowledge or involvement. The room is a held breath. The signatures on Dante's copies are not Marco's. I know this because I am one of 12 certified fraud examiners in Georgia with court-recognized expertise in forensic document analysis. I had both signatures independently verified 6 weeks ago. Dante's jaw tightens. "You set me up," he says, quiet, rearranging in real time. "No, I drafted documents you requested and chose not to file them. I documented the request. I waited. You walked in here this morning and submitted forged documents in a formal estate proceeding. That is a federal crime in front of 7 witnesses and a licensed attorney. I didn't create that choice. You made it this morning." I look toward the door. Detective Lena Vasquez has been waiting in the lobby for 40 minutes. She enters the room now, and the folder on the table, the one Dante submitted, becomes evidence. They walked Dante out at 11:47 in the morning. He didn't make a scene. Rosa expected screaming. Lorenzo and Pietro expected the kind of dramatic resistance that makes for better retelling. But Dante walked out quietly, his portfolio still on the table, his jacket still pressed, his face carrying an expression I had never once seen on him. Resignation, not remorse. That distinction matters. Remorse is being sorry for what you did. Resignation is being sorry you lost. Dante was never sorry for what he did. He was sorry that the one person in the family he'd always counted on to be invisible had spent 7 years being anything but. Gianna came back into the conference room after everyone left, set 2 coffees on the table, sat. "You've been carrying that folder for 4 years, she said. "Longer than that," I told her. "I've been carrying the decision it represented for 7. She nodded once, the nod of a precise person who understands something completely and doesn't need to perform the understanding. "Marco chose well," she said. The formal transfer took 11 weeks. 8 properties, fully tenanted, professionally managed, cash flowing cleanly, the way Marco had always insisted. I did not inherit debt. I did not inherit chaos. I inherited something a man spent 40 years building, with the specific knowledge that the wrong hands would dismantle it inside a decade. But it was the letter that broke me open. 6 weeks after the estate closed, packed inside a box of Marco's personal files, handwritten, cream-colored stationery, my name in his deliberate, unhurried script. He wrote that he had known about the documents. His attorney found a draft during a routine file review 2 years before he died. He was not angry. He sat with it for 3 days. What he felt at the end wasn't remorse, it was clarity. He wrote, "I did not call you 7 years ago because I needed an investigator, Valentina. I called you because I needed to know what you would do when the person you love most asks you to help them do something wrong. You helped him, and then you stopped, and then you kept the evidence, and then you waited. That is not someone who chose loyalty over integrity. That is someone who understood that real loyalty sometimes means letting consequences arrive on their own schedule. He wrote that the $214,000 Dante stole, he had already absorbed it, written it off. He had known about the skimming before he ever called me. He needed to see what I would do, not with the fraud, with the documents. The last paragraph was short. You gave Dante 7 years to become someone different. He chose not to. That is not your failure. That is his answer. Now build something that lasts. You already know how. I have read that letter 43 times. Not for validation. I stopped needing that from anyone a long time ago. I read it because it is the only document in my possession that captures what it feels like to be truly seen. Not for what you prove in a conference room, but for the texture of your private decisions, the choices no one witnesses, the moments where you could have gone either way and you chose the harder, slower, more painful path because it was the only one you could live inside of without losing yourself. Dante accepted a plea agreement 4 months later. 2 counts of federal fraud, document falsification, financial elder abuse, 18 months minimum security, 5 years probation, full restitution. His Miami firm dissolved within weeks. 3 civil suits followed. The magazines that featured him have not returned his calls. He lives in my mother's house now. Rosa and I speak on the first Sunday of every month. The conversations are careful, not yet warm. She hasn't apologized in words, but she calls every first Sunday without fail. And I answer every time. That is where we are, and it is not nothing. I manage 14 properties now, Marco's 8, and 6 I acquired on my own, quietly over 7 years, while my family thought I was filing government paperwork and wasting my potential. Combined value, $9.4 million. Monthly net income, $31,000 and change. And the compliance career I am leaving at the end of this quarter to manage my portfolio full-time. I don't tell this story for sympathy. I tell it because somewhere right now, there's a woman sitting at a family dinner being talked over, managed down, quietly reduced into a smaller version of herself by people who decided, without evidence, who she is and what she is capable of. I want her to know, quiet is not weakness. Patience is not passivity. The most powerful position you can occupy is the one no one thinks to look for you in. Build in silence. Document everything. Let people show you who they are for as long as it takes. And when the moment comes, and it will come, don't perform your strength. Just open the folder. If this story hits you somewhere real, give it a thumbs up. It tells me to keep bringing you more. And drop in the comments where you're listening from. I read every single one. And if you know someone who's been quietly underestimated, share this with them today. They need to hear it. Subscribe to this channel so you never miss my next upload. See you around.